Morning, everyone. I hope you can hear us and see us okay. So just wanted to say a quick welcome to everyone. I hope you are enjoying all of this amazingly sunny weather. And we are so excited to be here this morning and sharing some of our latest insights from Milkround. And today we're going to be joined as well. So we're joined by Steve from Universum. So Steve, give us a wave. And we're also joined by our student panelists. So we've got Agatha, Sam and Avneet on the call with us today, who are going to be answering some of your questions about how they've been feeling about their future careers and giving us a little bit more insight into really how they're feeling, what their concerns are, what their perceptions are. And also just to introduce myself, I'm Georgie, so I work at Milkround, and I'm also joined by my colleague Charlotte. Charlotte, give us a wave. And we're going to be presenting our latest insights into the student and graduate markets. So I've kind of just explained what we're going to cover today. So like I said, the way the session will run, we will share our candidate compass insights. So normally we would be at, we normally host an insight breakfast at the Foyles bookshop on Charing Cross Road. And whilst it's a little bit different this year, everything is different this year, we're so excited that we can still be sharing all of our latest research. And then Steve is going to go through a new employer brand for a new workforce. So really looking at how employer branding has evolved over time. And then, as I said, we've got our student panelists who are going to be answering some of your questions. So I'm going to get right into our research. So every year we survey students and grads to understand their career perceptions. So we focus on topics to evaluate graduate career confidence and their biggest concerns when it comes to entering the working world. So our candidate compass findings allow employers like you to understand the thoughts of today's students and graduates, which you can use to help shape your graduate recruitment strategies. Now, it's really important that we analyse the direction students and graduates are looking to take and how you as employers can help support them to make the right decisions with their future careers. Now, this year we had 5 key themes. So the first one being graduating amidst uncertainty. So this really does speak for itself, and it will be so interesting to gather some of the thoughts from the guys this morning about how this has really impacted them and their studies as they are graduating this year. Now, and it's really important to understand how they are feeling and how they believe that this will impact their career. Next up, we've got diversity and inclusion. So a key focus and challenge for all employers. And here we can see what actions students and graduates want to see from you. Then we have attracting and recruiting graduates. So what processes do they prefer and what are their expectations? And then retention. So retention is just as important as attraction. And again, we need to understand what will encourage graduates to stay and how you can better support them. And finally, future-proofing the workforce. So what are their biggest concerns and how can you combat these? So before we dive in, I just wanted to share a quick breakdown of our respondents this year. So we had just under 3,000 students and grads who shared their thoughts and feelings, with a quarter of those stating they are graduating this year. So just to note, we had our survey open for just a week. So this was back when everything, I mean, it still is, there are lots of changes happening all the time, which is why we only wanted to keep our survey open for a short period of time, because we really wanted to understand how they were feeling really in that time and in that moment. And also, let's just take a little closer look at the diversity of our respondents. So we had a high proportion of female respondents this year. You can also see a breakdown of respondents' ethnicity and whether or not they received free school meals. I also want to mention here that with everything we share with you today, We can break all of these findings down by all of these demographics, also graduation year, course, university. So if there is a particular area that you'd like us to delve into deeper, then please do get in touch after this session. Now I'm going to pass over to Charlotte, who's going to take us through the candidate overview.
Great, thanks Georgie. So let's head into our first topic with a view of the market and candidates. So let's go right in with what the most popular sectors were for respondents. Medical and pharmaceutical came out top, whilst it's no surprise that this is a popular sector from looking at past year's research as well. With everything that's happened this year surrounding COVID-19, it's great to see students and graduates are passionate to work in this sector. So we also asked respondents who their dream company to work for would be, and the NHS came out on top for a second year in a row, which is really lovely to see. But moving on to the least popular sectors. So the least popular sectors that candidates said they wanted to work in were logistics and transport, insurance and consumer goods. It's important to be aware and engage with students to understand why these sectors don't currently appeal to them. So there are many ways you can engage with this audience to understand the misconceptions, but one we would highly recommend is running focus groups with smaller clusters of students to really understand their current perceptions. So this will allow you to put activity in place to combat any challenges, and we can always support you with engaging, so do get in touch if that's something you're looking to do. So just before I move on, just really quickly, if you guys have any questions throughout, please do ask them in the chat function or the question function as we go through. And if there are any questions that you think of for the student and graduate panel, please do ask them in there and we'll get around to it at the end as well. So moving on, so after looking at preferred sectors, we can now see how long respondents believe it will take them to secure their first role out of university. So positively, nearly 70% feel it will take them 6 months or less, and only 11% say it will take them over a year, which is great to see. However, when we do look at this year's cohort of graduates, so far only 12% have secured their graduate job, which is compared to 17% of graduates last year who had secured their job by this point in time, which is a little concerning, but this could be due to the current circumstances. So when we look at the type of company a graduate wants to work for, 36% said they want to work for a large corporation, compared to only 6% who said they'd like to work for a startup. This could again be with everything surrounding COVID-19. Young workers may feel like a large corporation can offer more job security. And there's also larger companies adopting more flexible working opportunities that usually smaller startup style cultures would be able to offer. So that could be why we've seen an increase in larger companies. Moving on to some yearly comparisons, having faced and still facing a really challenging year, we felt it vital to compare our research year on year. It's really important that we understand how perceptions have changed over the last year and how perhaps COVID-19 has impacted the expectations and worries of students and graduates. So firstly, we can see quite a large drop in confidence that they will work in their dream industry, with 83% last year saying they believe they will, compared to 62% this year. We can see that a larger proportion of this year's respondents considered an apprenticeship over going to university. So with the government focusing on young people and their careers with their recently announced Kickstart scheme, there's a real opportunity here for employers to focus on their apprenticeship offerings. And finally, when we look at where they believe there are more career opportunities, the percentage has fallen for those that feel there are more opportunities in London. So again, could this be due to a rise in remote working, as well as employers widening their office locations outside of the capital? So let's take a closer look at where respondents do want to work. So as you can see here, the most desired area still remains as London, but we can see that nearly 1 in 5 respondents are willing to relocate, which really shows the flexibility of today's graduates. When we look at the top motivating factors as to why they want to work in these specific locations, nearly half said it was due to accessing the best jobs, and just behind that was to be near to their families. And thirdly, and perhaps most importantly, is the fact of affordable living costs for students and graduates. which we are going to delve a little deeper into as we undertook some other research earlier in the year to better understand the cost of relocating and working for graduates. So it's so important as employers focus on improving social mobility that the costs of working are considered. To attract candidates from lower socio-economic groups, you must firstly understand the positions they're in financially, so you can put processes in place to better support them. So not only throughout the recruitment process, but also through onboarding and further throughout their careers as well. So the additional research that you can see now on the screen was conducted earlier this year. It was actually prior to our Candidate Compass research, and 2,000 adults who have graduated in the last 5 years were surveyed. So it shows that the average upfront cost of starting a first job is over £2,500. So this includes relocation plus fees such as putting down initial rental deposit and paying first month's rent, amongst other expenses. For those relocating to London, the costs were even higher. And what's more troubling is 2/3 of graduates start their working life with an overdraft of £1,500 on average. So if we look at how this impacts, the financial realities are simply too much for some graduates, leading many to revisit their career plans to avoid the cost of relocating or interview travel costs. Alternatively, some must rely on credit cards and overdrafts and perhaps loans from their parents to address these issues. Looking at this, it's ultimately going to impact those from lower socioeconomic backgrounds the most, as they unfortunately may not be in a position to borrow from their family or to pay back a loan. So further to this, when we look at how this impacts graduates once they've started their role, 84% state that managing finances was still challenging during the first month at work, with a few saying they had even taken extreme measures to handle the issue. So some had skipped meals, some had to use food banks, and some even went on dates to avoid paying for food. So we know that employers are tackling to address diversity and inclusion in the workplace to make it more inclusive for everyone. But how can we do that if students are being deterred by the high costs? Here we put together a few tips that could help out. So firstly, have you thought about offering any additional benefits to help graduates with relocation costs, such as a golden handshake or a relocation bonus? Secondly, you can always implement an open forum for new graduates. So this is where they could speak to existing employees who previously received similar relocation support, which will allow them to discuss processes and guidance, making them feel much more comfortable to ask for this. And finally, you should be offering a living wage for your undergraduate and graduate programs. So from our Candidate Compass research, this is noted as a key way for employers to show they are attracting a diverse workforce. So I'm going to pass back over to Georgia now, who's going to take us on to our next topic.
Thank you, Charlotte. So for young people, this is already a challenging period to be transitioning from education to the workplace. However, this year has caused more obstacles and disruptions than previously. And whilst a lot of companies are under a lot of strain, it's really important to continue to focus on young talent. Again, with the government launching the Kickstart scheme, as mentioned earlier, this is a real opportunity to support that future talent. So we asked respondents which issue they believe will have the greatest negative impact on their future career prospects. And perhaps unsurprisingly, COVID-19 came out on top, with over half stating this. Only 1 in 10 believe that none of the issues on this slide presented here will have any negative impact. And we then asked if they would be more likely to accept the first job they are offered due to COVID-19, which again, nearly half have responded that yes, they would. So it's important for not only employers, but for candidates too, to know that where they're going to be working is the right place for them. So we would suggest ensuring that there is a safe space for them to ask any questions about the company and culture, etc., before accepting a job offer. And with accepting the first job they are offered also brings the question, would they accept less money? Now, just under half of respondents said that they would. Now, whilst for some employers, you may think that bringing in young talent at a lower cost is the right thing to do right now, don't be fooled, as later we are going to share just how important salary is to the younger generation. And again, you must take into consideration, just as we've spoken about, how expensive the cost of working or relocating is. So ensuring that you're supporting and looking after future talent is of utmost importance. And then finishing this section on a more positive note, nearly 3/4 have stated that COVID-19 has not impacted their decision on which industry or sector that they are looking to work in, which is really good, because we know that some sectors have really struggled more than others. So good to see that people aren't deterred by that. Now I'm going to pass back over to Charlotte to take us through diversity and inclusion.
Great, thank you, Georgie. So on to diversity and inclusion, a topic that I hope is on everyone's agendas and core focus for the coming year. So now is the time to not only talk about it, but we must act and be truly honest and transparent. So firstly, we asked respondents which factors they feel employers could do to really show they are attracting a diverse workforce, and practicing blind recruitment came out on top. So I'm sure a lot of you already know what this is, but it's where you remove any key identifiers such as gender, name, ethnicity from a person's application, and that can help to remove the bias. So secondly, again, we see the need for financial support come up, with students and graduates looking for employers to offer support with travel costs and with living wage salaries. And furthermore, they want to see employers offering flexible working to fit around the needs of today's younger workers. So knowing that they can be open about their needs is a hugely important part of this. And so please do make it clear that you're open to having these conversations with candidates. So we also ask candidates if they believe that coming from a lower socio-economic background will impact someone's career, with 1 in 3 saying they believe it will heavily impact. Moreover, 1/4 believe that not coming from a similar socio-economic background to other employees in the business is seen as a barrier to fitting in, unfortunately. So when we looked further at what respondents believe are the biggest barriers to fitting into a company and their culture, we also wanted to point out this finding. So we found that nearly 1/3 of female respondents perceive being a woman in a traditionally male industry as the biggest barrier to fitting in, showing that this is a clear concern for women working in male-dominated industries. So what does this mean for you? Well, businesses should be taking steps to encourage women to overcome this self-doubt in the workplace. You should be celebrating powerful role models in your business. So is there the possibility to offer mentorship programs or create networks within the business? So at Total Jobs Group, we've recently started a Women at TJG network. So this offers a safe space as well as a place to educate and strive for change, which has been really popular and has taken on really well within the business. So you could also hold lunches or meetings between graduates and senior women within your business, or you could even host insight days, which would attract more females to apply. So here we've just put a few further tips for improving diversity and inclusion in the workplace. So has your company adopted reverse mentoring? This is where a junior employee is matched with perhaps a manager or an executive within the business, offering the opportunity to connect with individuals that perhaps wouldn't normally network. So this also creates a cultural learning opportunity between the two. You could also be engaging with candidates from different and diverse universities. So virtual offerings are allowing us to connect with candidates from multiple universities at once, and you shouldn't be discouraging this. And when we are allowed back on campus, make sure you're visiting these universities, and you should also be thinking about offering skills and insight sessions as well. And finally, we recommend that you should be promoting case studies of employees. But most importantly, you do need to make sure these are representative of your company. So honesty is of the utmost importance for improving diversity, and making it clear that you are committed to making changes is just one of many steps. So I'm going to pass back over to Georgie now for the next topic.
Thank you. So we're now going to just go through our findings for preferences of recruitment for students and graduates. So going straight in, firstly, are they even feeling prepared for the workplace? Now, 10% shared that they feel or felt wholly unprepared for the workplace, whilst a further 41% shared that whilst they feel somewhat prepared, they still felt that there were gaps in their education that would have really benefited them when joining the workplace. And when we take a closer look at what skills they felt were most important to employers, communication, teamwork, and problem solving came out on top. And when we look at how they rate their own current soft skills, they highlight teamwork, adaptability, and time management as their 3 strongest soft skills. At the latter end, they believe they lack in leadership and creativity skills. And interestingly, 43% said that they feel they lack the confidence in their workplace skills. Now, what is so important is knowing what skills are most important to you when recruiting graduates. Are you making this clear throughout the job description and recruitment process? Also, how are you helping them to develop these skills throughout the onboarding process as well? So I've just got a quick poll. I've got 2 polls actually that we want to find out which skills are most important to you and your company. So if we could have the first poll, that would be great. So you should have a poll come up on your screen. If you could just tick which of the skills that are shown on the screen you feel are most important when recruiting graduates, please tick that one. And we've got another one coming up in a second, so I'll give you just another 10 seconds. And what we want to do with this information is, so obviously we have thousands of students who share with us how they're feeling, but what's so important is that we understand what is important to you, so that we can relay that back to all of these potential candidates so that they know how to upskill in these areas. So we want to build a piece around upskilling in certain soft skills. So hopefully you finished the first one. If we could go on to the second one now. Perfect. So again, you should have another poll that's come up, and just let us know which one is most important. I mean, I think many of them are extremely important. And it's just really thinking about, right, how are you helping these graduates to really build up on these skills? So I'll just give you 5 more seconds to finish that off. Okay, great. Thank you so much. Okay, so as I said, we'll collate all of that information and we will also let you know once we build out our content for candidates as well. So thank you for that. Now moving on, so next let's take a look at what attracts a candidate to apply. So salary came out on top, which is what I referenced to earlier, showing that salary still is a really important factor to students and graduates. Now secondly came location, and thirdly career progression is seen as a top influence for students and grads. So again, throughout the recruitment process, ensure that you highlight what their career pathway looks like. Through case studies or perhaps other graduates who have joined and grown within the company, as well as highlighting the training opportunities available to them. And then when we look at what type of recruitment processes they prefer, students and grads still favour the traditional CV or cover letter and face-to-face interviews, showing that there isn't a need to overcomplicate the interview process. And when a student or graduate interviews with you, make sure you're offering them as much feedback as possible. And try and make it as personable as possible. Really think about, if they have interviewed, where have they gone wrong? A third of respondents shared that they haven't received any feedback after attending an interview, and out of those that did, they had to chase for it. So onto application processes. So interestingly, nearly half of respondents have been put off applying for a role due to the recruitment process. So again, we iterate the desire of simplicity and transparency for candidates. Of those that said they had been discouraged, 67% said it was because it was too complicated, 63% mentioned that there was just too many stages, and a quarter said it was because of the jargon used to describe the role. Now, jargon is a bigger challenge than you may think, and I think we're all guilty of it. When you're part of a company, when you've been working there, you understand all of these terms, all of these abbreviations and whatnot, and it can be so confusing, especially for the new graduates coming in. So back in 2019, we undertook research surrounding jargon in job ads, And we have created a tool to help employers to create jargon-free job ads. So in this video, you can see our jargon decoder tool, which easily highlights which terms could be deemed confusing. So it really helps you to really understand your job descriptions and think about who they're going to be facing, who your audience is going to be. Now, there is a link to the jargon decoder in the full candidate compass report, which you can download, or please let us know if you'd like us to send the link directly to you. It's completely free to use and accessible to all. And then I'm just going to pass you back over to Charlotte for our final section.
Okay, thank you, Georgie. So for our final section, let's take a look at retaining and future-proofing your workforce. So once you've hired a graduate, how long are they looking to stay for? So a third say that they're looking to stay for their first company for under 2 years, and only 7% are looking to stay for over 5 years. So as this is such a low figure, we wanted to find out why. So when looking at what could encourage graduates to stay, 82% want their future employers to offer a clear path to promotion. And if offered this, the number of those who would stay for 5 or more years rises to 24%, which just shows that for young talent, knowing their career progression path is extremely important, and you should be really transparent and clear for all of the graduates joining your company from the outset. So now moving on to their salary expectations. Firstly, to note that according to the ISE's research, the average starting salary for a graduate is around £29,000. So when we look at what they expect to earn upon graduation, 64% expect to earn £25,000 or less, and 85% expect to earn £30,000 or less, which shows that the salary expectations are realistic, if not actually considerably lower than the average graduate. This is obviously dependent on the sector they look to work in and the location. And also to note, these salary expectations haven't changed much over the last year, with just under 90% of 2019 respondents expecting to earn less than £30,000. And then when we look at their salary expectations 5 years on, half still expect to be earning £30,000 or less. So let's delve a little deeper into salary expectations and look at the differences between male and females. So unfortunately, women do have lower salary expectations, with 75% of females expecting to earn under £30,000 a year upon graduation, compared to 68% of males. And then when we look at 5 years post-graduation, there is still a difference, with 69% of females believing they will earn less than £45,000 compared to 58% of males. Which then, unsurprisingly, with lower salary expectations, 40% of women are concerned about low pay in the future, compared to 34% of men. And this is very similar to our findings from last year, which highlights that women are still feeling the same concerns, which again is something that you should be looking into. So finally, what are student and graduates' biggest concerns for their future careers? So all of these highlighted here on the slide should be noted so that you're aware and able to showcase to candidates how you address these challenges. At the end of the survey, we asked respondents if they had any further comments or thoughts they would like to share. We saw many who placed real concern on employers asking for experience when they felt that whilst they had the determination and passion to learn, they hadn't had the opportunity to gain experience. Secondly, they're worried about low pay, which, as we've seen, their expectations are realistic, so ultimately this shouldn't be an issue as long as you are offering living wages. Again, we see worry from candidates that they don't have much experience, and we still continue to see concern that candidates who attend or attended prestigious universities will be prioritised. So we know the need to broaden diversity, however, you must commit to making these changes. So at Milkround, we're committed to supporting students from all backgrounds, and we also have the audience that you can get in front of. So whether that be through virtual skill sessions or helping you put together content or video case studies as well, which is good to note. So I'm just going to pass back over to Georgie to quickly summarise our findings.
Thank you. So that is everything we have time for today. So just to reiterate a few of our key findings from what we've shared today. So there has been a decrease in respondents who believe they'll work in their dream industries, and I'm sure that obviously with everything going on this year, that might have really influenced that percentage drop. We've also seen an increase in the percentage of students and graduates who believe blind recruitment will help tackle diversity. So they really want to see employers practicing that. And then finally, the percentage who believe that there are more career opportunities in London has decreased quite significantly. So interesting to see that London, whilst it still is obviously a real popular place for graduates to live in after they finish university, they are seeing more opportunities outside of the big city. So in our full candidate compass report, which I've put a link there, but obviously we can share that with you afterwards, we also cover topics such as what boosts productivity for students and graduates. We cover mental health and how you can better support new graduates joining your company, and finally why they decline job offers too. So I'm now going to, oh, there was also that final one there. So top factors which attract candidates to apply for roles, that final key summary. So I'm now going to pass over to Steve from Universum. I also just want to note that Universum partnered with us on this piece of research. So a huge thank you to Steve and the team for your support with this research. It's been great working with you guys again this year. So I'll pass you over to Steve now.
Hi everyone. Yes, I thought thank you to the Milkround team for having me along to add some sort of extra layers to really good stuff that they've just been sharing. Just as an introduction to Universum, we sort of wear two hats for over 30 years. We've been the largest research organization into student audiences. We interview and survey over 1 million students around the world every year. And we're going to cover a little bit of what we've seen from this last year in the UK's cohort of that, which is just over 40,000 students. And so that obviously, as you can imagine, that makes us a great partnership with Milkround and all the work that they do as well in this sector. Also, my role, I'm the UK and Ireland director for Universum. And yeah, and off the back of that research, we help organisations by understanding talent audiences, not just students, but we do professionals as well. We help organisations shape the kind of messaging, understanding what the talent needs, and start to build employer branding and communication strategy to help attract and speak the right language to the audiences. And what I want to kind of cover today a little bit is the fact that largely is a difference between the sort of Generation Y, which is the generation that's just sort of starting to come out of the student realm effectively, and then the more mature students now, and into this sort of new Generation Z cohort of students. Because what I want to look at is we see nuances year on year. We take these surveys year on year, we ask for opinions, etc., about brands and what people are looking for, etc. But we're noticing some really interesting changes that really organizations need to take a lot of attention towards, and actually how therefore we need to think about employer branding and communication moving forward. So on the next slide here, one of the kind of the benchmarks, if you like, of how we measure employer brand each year is the 40 attributes of attractiveness, employer attractiveness. So this is a bit of benchmark for many, many years. We use it to measure internal opinion about an organization. We use it to measure external opinion about an organization. And we use these 40 drivers also to ask students and professionals, what is it that you need? What are you looking for from your next employer or your first employer? What is important to you? What is less important to you, etc. And these 40 drivers, which are categorized in sort of slightly different corners there, as you can see, are almost like a mixing desk style of the way in which we can identify, you know, the most important and least important elements, but also for organizations, what do people see in organizations and what they don't see. So it's really provide a really crucial benchmark into understanding how people feel about your brands. Well, in this circumstance here, we're looking at what are people looking at when they're looking for their career. What are they expecting? What are they hoping for from an employer, etc., etc. So of those 40 attributes, 10 certain ones stand out more than others. Yes, that's fine, George. You can move to the next slide. That's great. So So one of the things we started to look at, when you take all those 40 factors, which are the ones, what are the sort of changes that we're seeing between one generation and this next generation, this upcoming workforce? And one of the things we can, and this chart here demonstrates the elements that have the most difference between generation Y and Z. So the ones at the top 5 are the ones that generation Z quite significantly sees as more important, and the ones that generation Y sees slightly more significantly important. So, and one of the things that instantly we can sort of see about the characteristics of the top ones there, there is a big one for high future earnings, interestingly enough, but also underneath that as well, there's a lot of things around that are much more around the cultural values of the workplace. Support for gender equality, much higher than was important to Generation Y. Secure employment has a jump. Friendly work environment and respect for its people. So yeah, they want to earn money. The next generation is absolutely seeing it, which very much falls in line with that thing we were talking about earlier in the Milkround study around the fact that they need to be able to see where their career is going in an organization, but they want to feel part of something that is valued, where people are looked after and is secure. That's really, and this study was done pre-COVID, so there's no kind of COVID slant on this. This is very much kind of organic research, not kind of filtered by that COVID spike, if you like. And you can see the Generation Y looked much more around flexibility, work-life balance, new technology and future education. It looked much more around the things they can get now and gather. And so if we move on to the next slide, one of the things that we've noticed when we look at, and particularly here, what we're looking at, the 10 most attractive out of the 40 for each of our Generation Y studies and our Generation Z studies. And you can see on the right-hand side, Generation Y, the things that are going down are the things that are less important to Generation Y. But the overall feel of the Generation Y content on the right there is around lifestyle, purpose. Yes, it's career and financial. That's consistent across any cohort of research. But there's a lot more around what they can get, what they can gather, and it's a lot about receiving and gathering and growing as a professional with intent to move. And one of the things, of course, we've known for years around the Generation Y and millennials age group is what we call a portfolio lifestyle, career, portfolio CV, the element of moving places from year to year, collecting experience and building themselves as kind of a built career where they're gathered and collected, and which has high progression but low stability. But Generation Z on the left, so the attribute, what's quite startling is how many uprising points there are on the left-hand side that are focused around, yes, for sure at the top there, clear path for advancement and high future earnings. Again, mirroring what Milkround's Candidate Compass survey says around the fact that they really, the number one thing they're looking for when they look at an organization is they want to be able to see that clear path for advancement. And that tells us a lot about then the sort of messaging we need to be thinking about. But underneath that as well, there are other elements that are very, very important to this new generation and coming into the workforce. And that is around security, and it's around respect and friendly environment and the opportunity to make a personal impact. So there are the shifting dials on this are telling us that maybe some of the things we've always communicated, the things, the elements, what we can give you right here, right now, whilst some of them will remain very, very important in the way we communicate to young early careers audiences. Actually, by the same token, there are some newer elements. There are things that are rising to the top that we need to think about, and they are around security, purpose, belonging, respect, and impact. These are things where people are saying, I want to feel proud of the place I want to work for. I want an organization that will look after me, that will build my career and support me through that. And the implications are ones where people will sure receive, just like the generation, want to receive things, but will belong, want to add value, and therefore potentially, does that mean they want to stay? And as that, again, go back to the Milkround, the Compass, kind of the Compass survey, made this point, if we can demonstrate the career opportunities and security that is on offer to an employee or an early careers employee or a graduate, there's a higher percentage chance they're going to stay. Our research suggests they want to stay. and maybe society and what they've seen from their parents and older siblings or whatever else it might be, might demonstrate that actually security is quite important right now, maybe more so than the flitting around, particularly with social elements like wanting to maybe buy a house before we're 30, for example, something that Generation Y has been struggled to be able to do because of the cost of living and the fact they've built no savings because they've not worked off a secure background. So very interesting, very dynamic differences. So the things that they're looking for. So moving on to the next point here, looking at it from an employer angle, one of the things that we asked in a survey that we did to employers during the early part of the COVID period, we said to talent acquisition leaders and employer branding leaders, what do you want to be remembered by? What are the 3 words you'd like to be remembered for after COVID, once this is all kind of hopefully tied down a little bit? And these are the things that came out the most. And they were around people first, caring, safety, communications, human elements, well-being, etc., etc. Now, can we now see some correlation with my previous slide? Is that the irony, or the almost like the perfect storm that has come from all of this, is actually this year we, through very unfortunate circumstances, we as organizations have learned to realize the value of this. This is what companies want to be remembered for. They don't want to be remembered for profitability. They don't want to be remembered for performance through this period. That's not the thing. They're learning how to care. They're learning how to look after their people, understand and listen and provide security and safety to their employees. Well, what do you know? That was exactly what this next generation was hoping to find in their future employers that maybe previously they weren't seeing from the employers. So we're learning through this period to actually build some of the attributes that are needed for the generation to come in. And so in a sense, there's some positive things that come out of a very, very hard situation that maybe as organizations we're going to be better to our employees as a consequence of things. And what that therefore means is, moving into the next slide, Georgie, is that the style of employer branding is very already, from the conversations and the many conversations that we have around evolving EVPs and evolving employer brand communications, are less about the aesthetic elements of employer brand. We've kind of been used to, they've become a little bit of a cliche over the years, the slides in the office, not that that's a regular cliche, but the fussball tables, the high fives in the corridors, the workspaces. All of these things will become less important, not only because of what we've seen from the research, but of course because of one of the other effects of COVID is the fact that we now realize that more people will begin to work on a flexible work from home kind of basis and not need to be present in the office to be an employer any longer, employee any longer. It's going to change. And we're going to see more stories, a bit like the Wallace example here on the right-hand side in Australia, where they rewarded their 100,000 employees with shares in the business to say thank you for how they supported the business through this difficult time, and how they've hopefully started to come out the other side still as an operating and secure business, but they're thanking their employers for doing that and being part of it and sticking with them through that. And those messages are very stark, the visuals, the aesthetics versus the heart, versus the emotional element, and which one is more likely to hold people dear, which one is more likely to resonate with that new audience that we were just talking about, that new talent workforce that are coming into it. Well, naturally, from what we've learned, it's the one on the right, because it's lasting, it builds advocacy, it's something they'll be proud to tell their friends in a pub. The days of telling your friends in the pub that we've got a beanbag and a darts board in the corner of the office don't really matter anymore. They're not unique, they're not distinct any longer. So again, the emotional element is really important now in the way in which we communicate. So just to kind of summarize on my final slide there, Georgie, thank you, is that through this period, I think this was evolving anyway, because I think we need to understand how the next workforce is what they care about, what matters. We need to think about emotional connections. The phrase that it was on that very first slide, will be on the closing slide in a second, on in Universum's reception It says our goal is to make people fall in love with your employer brand, make an employer brand that people will fall in love with your organization. And I think we're in that kind of world right now where we need to find emotional connection with our own organization. We need to feel secure. We need to feel belonging and have well-being inside our organizations, but still have a career, still go for the career, still have an opportunity to develop and grow as a professional, but with a cradle of support. And so we need to learn to listen and understand those emotional stories inside the business much better through this period, and start to think about the weight of our communication when we then tell external audiences as to what it is like to work there. So that's just a little summary of one of the things we found this year that is going to change employer brand, in my opinion. And also, to be fair, we've also been seeing organizations making these distinct changes in our customer suite. So there you go. If you want to talk to me about that afterwards, please get in contact with me and connect with me externally. So thank you for that. Let me pass you back to Charlotte, who will cover some more pieces from the Milkround side, and I think the panel.
Great, thanks so much, Steve. That was really, really interesting. So we're now going to move on to our student panel, or student and graduate panel, which is very exciting. So if we just pop our cameras on. Perfect. We go. So we've got Avneet, Agatha and Sam joining us today. So they are all recent graduates, but I will let them introduce themselves. So Avneet, would you like to go first?
Hi, I'm Avneet. I'm 23. I'm a liberal arts and science grad from the University of Birmingham, and I majored in history.
Thank you. Agatha?
Hi everyone, I'm Agatha. I'm also 23 and I've just graduated from a Law with a Year Abroad degree at the University of Sheffield.
Hi everyone. Sorry, it's a bit too soon.
No, you good.
Hi everyone, I'm Sam. I'm 25 and I'm a recent neuroscience grad from the University of Bristol.
Perfect, thanks guys. So we've had a couple of questions come in, but if you do have any questions for them, please do continue to pop them into the chat and we will go through them as they come in. So firstly guys, what have been your experiences of searching for graduate jobs so far? Sam, we'll go to you first.
Quite tough really. I've had a few interviews, but a lot of the ones that have got back to me, I've usually had to follow up with. And then when you look on LinkedIn as well, if you're using that for job search, you can see how many people have actually applied for those kind of jobs. I had a look yesterday, and like most jobs have got about like 500 odd applicants for them. And it's just, yeah, quite tough really.
I can imagine, especially when you're not sure what's going on in the current circumstances. You're in even more of a difficult position, especially when employers aren't coming back to you. Agatha, have you had a similar experience?
Yeah, similar to Sam, quite tough, especially at the moment. Also as well, just very competitive, a lot of stages, so it's quite long. You feel like, oh, I thought about, I wanted to apply to this place ages ago, and then you go through all the different stages, and to come out of that and have no feedback after working so hard on an application can be quite hard. But then the times when I have actually had sort of face-to-face interaction or virtual interaction, I have been able to get feedback, and it makes much more of a difference when they say, oh, we'll offer you feedback. Like, they know that this is also a learning experience for you, even if you aren't taken to the next stage. I think it makes them, an employer, come across better if you're at an assessment centre or whatever, and they say, of course you'll get feedback, and they are really proactive about like giving that to you. I think that's good.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think you know, you guys are putting in a lot of work, especially when they do have these lengthy application processes. And understandably, if there are a lot of people, it can be difficult to get individual feedback out. But I do think that that's something that employers should look to make sure they are doing, just to give you guys, like you said, it's a learning opportunity as well. Avneet, how about you?
So originally, schemes that I wanted to apply for this year were going to open in about March or May time, so they've actually been postponed by a year. So the things that I was hoping to apply to, I won't be able to apply to until next year, and even then I'll be competing with the 2021 graduates as well. So it's that element of, you know, increased competitiveness. And I've also found that when I have applied for a couple of roles, even if I don't get any feedback, or even if I don't get to the next stage, companies or organizations don't actually really inform me until way past, you know, like their forecast. So we'll get back in 2 to 3 weeks. I don't get informed at all. So really having that transparent process, even if you're not able to kind of impart personal feedback just because of the like a mass of applicants, just saying, unfortunately, you've not been able to proceed to the next stage, just having that is assurance, so I can, you know, take that experience and then move on to my next role in applying.
Yeah, definitely. I think then it gives you the opportunity then to move on to the next thing instead of waiting, and especially if you really, really want the job and you're holding off hoping that you're going to get that, like just having that clarity on whether you have got on to the next stage can really help you in your job search. Okay. So let's have another look at some questions here. So do you actually feel prepared for the workforce? So do you feel like university has given you the support that you needed, or do you think there's a lot riding on the employer themselves to help prepare you? Agatha, should we go to you first for that one?
Yeah, so I did a law undergrad and I want to go into law. I want to get a training contract with a law firm. And so for that, you feel prepared perhaps on the sort of academic side of it. And I know that I have to go back to law school to train more on like, this is how you be a lawyer. But in terms of employers and knowing who's out there, understanding the market, it's definitely more on the employers. And we're really lucky in law that you get a lot of employer contact, or at least I have, if you seek it out. And then, but the whole learning curve of learning about the market and how it works, I found I've learned more from my cohort or people like fellow students and graduates who I've actually met at events, just from them talking, or from at networking events talking to trainees or people who are also earlier on in their careers. You learn way more from them than you do formally at university, or even formally in presentations, because half of it is just understanding, okay, who is this employer, where do they fit, what kind of things do they do, and understanding that in a more holistic way perhaps comes better from other people talking about different companies and the market and their perceptions. Stereotypes play a big part in it as well. That's what I've found.
Yeah, definitely. It's always good to talk to other people, especially who have been going through similar experiences as well. So that's really interesting. Thanks, Agatha. Avni, how about you?
This is one of the reasons why I went for a liberal arts degree. So if people aren't familiar with the term, sort of liberal arts is sort of similar to the American kind of education, where you do bits and bobs of everything. So I'm a history major, so I've taken mostly like history modules, but around that I've been able to learn coding, archaeology, gender studies, and also even more so I had the chance to live abroad for a year in Dublin. So I feel that my degrees actually really helped me shape my thinking, being able to get insight into lots of different topics which you might not think linked together, but gives you that kind of adaptability and flexibility to kind of be able to problem solve and then take on new tasks and things. And also having the chance to kind of get involved with university as well. I think it's like you need to have the confidence to, you know, go for it, sort of getting involved in society committees, volunteering, just being willing to, like, you know, having the confidence to say, I want to at least have a go at it. I might not succeed, but I'll try and get that experience. And also kind of leaning towards employers, sort of seeing what their candidates can do, but also being willing to train them and kind of guide them a bit into the workforce if there's things they may not know or kind of need to adapt to the particular company they're applying to.
Yeah, of course, that's really interesting. Thanks, Avni. And Sam, do you have anything to add to the other two?
Yeah, so my course, I'd say, prepared me quite well for the workforce. So we did actually quite a lot of problem-based learning. So my second year, we had like a whole team of students where we would be given a problem. So I think the first one we were given was about someone who had a stroke, which is related to my degree, obviously. And we had to identify like what area of the brain like would have been affected from like her symptoms and everything like that. And then we had one person act as a chair, one person act as a scribe, and then gather 1 week, and then we'd just kind of brainstorm, similar to what a boardroom meeting would be like, and then go off and then assign everyone a bit of research what we had to do for each part we come up with, and then return the following week where we present our research to each other, and then pass it over to the scribe, where then it would be written as a report, and we just take it in turns each week. And then some of the other transferable skills I probably learned was from, obviously having deadlines, which everyone has, which is really good. And then verbal presentations, and then trying to find primary research and conducting research yourself. So a lot of mine was like lab-based work, which then went on to like inputting data and like analyzing it. And then also if you use the career service, that's quite a good way of having an understanding of what it's like to be in the workforce as well. So I got to achieve something called a Bristol Plus Award, which is an award that's given for extracurricular activity done at the university. So I think I had to do like practice assessment centres and like practice interviews and things like that. And then personally, I feel ready for the workforce anyway, because I'm 25. I went straight into full-time work after sixth form at the age of 18 before going back to college.
Yeah. Wow, so that's good. It's great that you had a good experience with your university as well, because it's always lovely to see that career services is stepping in and helping you guys to feel prepared for the workforce. Because I think it was more prominent in our last year's research, but a lot of people actually didn't feel too prepared for the workforce. So it's good to see that is changing, that you guys have all had good experiences in that respect, which is fantastic. So let's have a look at some of these other questions that have just come in. So has the change in employers adopting more remote working changed your mind on where you want to work, or made you consider working elsewhere? Avni, would you like to go first?
I definitely feel remote working gives more flexibility. So like a lot of I want to go into marketing, and one of the industries I'm considering is the publishing industry, in-house marketing for publishing house. And a lot of the roles are London centric, but I've seen that some publishing houses are offering remote work experiences for people who aren't able to, commute to London. So I definitely think there's greater considerations. However, I also think that I think the influence will be maybe not remote working per se, but flexibility in terms of working. So having that mix of being in office and then being able to work at home as well. Though I don't think it will convince me to work fully at home, just because I like the environment, going into work and talking with co-workers, etc.
Great, yeah, I totally understand. You don't want to lose out on that company culture of speaking with your colleagues and things like that. Agatha, would you like to go next?
Yeah, sure. So similar to Avni, I don't think it's made a massive difference. The places where I was applying to and locations where I was focusing on haven't changed too much in terms of, I suppose, finding the big grad job in the long term, because fingers crossed, we'd all like to hope that we can get back into offices and have that experience that Avni was talking about. But in the short term, just looking at sort of entry-level positions, it's quite nice when job adverts, even just for grad jobs as well, are quite transparent and open about you're going to be remote onboarded. We're happy for you to not live it, like we're happy for you to apply for this job even if you live somewhere else, because at the moment the first few months of you working are going to be online, and so that's quite nice just to have the confidence to be like, okay, I could apply for different opportunities that aren't necessarily available in my hometown, which, yeah, I think it's changed it sort of more in the short term, but in the long term, I think automatically you kind of assume that you're applying for places where you would end up having to commute into an office, and so it's still considering that aspect of it, yeah, for long-term jobs. Yeah,
very interesting, thank you. I am aware that it is now 11 o'clock, so obviously anybody that has to jump off, please do. I will just ask Sam the question as well, just so he can give his answer, and then we can close things off. But Sam, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, so it hasn't really changed how I'm applying for jobs anyway. I live in quite a rural county in the UK, so I was planning on just applying anywhere really. So yeah, there's not a lot of opportunities where I live. Yeah, and I think remote working wouldn't be great where I currently am, because we do have internet issues where I live, which isn't great. I know luckily it's working fine now, but I suppose another benefit of remote working is the fact that I can be flexible, that I can move anywhere within the country, and from my friends that are in full-time work at the moment, they found that within their offices that they're adopting more work from home options. They've also got the option to go into the office like a couple of times a week, and you still get that office atmosphere where you can stay focused and just get on with your job.
Sorry, I didn't realise I was on mute there. Brilliant. Yeah, thank you so much, guys, for your answers. We just have one last question. It's just a really, really quick one. It's just a yes or no answer, so I felt like you guys could answer this. Are any of you guys using LinkedIn as your primary method of job searching?
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like you are.
Yeah.
Cool, great. Thank you. So I'm just going to pass back over to Georgie just to close off the webinar. But thank you so much, guys. That was really, really interesting and useful.
Yeah, thank you so much, Avni, Agatha, and Sam. That was so interesting. I'd actually love to sit here and talk to you guys for longer if we could. But thank you so much to everyone who's listening in as well. I hope you found the research and insights useful. As mentioned, we will be we'll have a recording of this, which we'll be able to share with you. And please do download a copy of the Candidate Compass report. There are so much more insights within it. And like I said earlier, we can delve in deeper, so we can really split it out, filter by demographics if you want to look at a particular area. So we can definitely do that. And thank you so much to Steve for joining us. I think that is just absolutely hit it. Hit the point there that it really is all around that kind of emotional connection for employer branding at the moment. And yeah, just thank you everyone, and I hope you all have lovely days. Right, bye everyone.
Thank you, everyone.